Subnautica is a game I had only just recently discovered, and it's very rare for a game to fly under my radar to the point where I am completely blind to it. I usually have some clue about the game, either I'm aware of the title, or there's a character I recognise, or something about the game that even though I've never played it, I am aware of it. And somehow Subnautica, and even now its sequel, which is in early access, Below Zero, they both went under my radar from Subnautica's original launch right up until about 2 weeks ago. And the weirder thing about it is it didn't come to my attention through something like a YouTuber's playlist popping up in my recommended. It didn't come about through like an IGN review. I found Subnautica through Godzilla. I'm well into Godzilla. I'm a massive Godzilla fan. I love anything with kaiju, anything with giant creatures. I was actually watching a video where they compared the size of creatures throughout different kinds of media. So you had the lambent Brumark from Gears of War, you had the Cloverfield monster, and obviously Godzilla. But there was one creature in there that caught my eye, which was called the Sea Emperor Leviathan. And besides having a cool name and a really distinct design, I wanted to know why this creature was included. I'd never seen this creature before. It was alien to me, it was foreign. So I went out of my way to Google it, and then I found out it's in this game Subnautica, and it's just one of many different creatures called Leviathans that are in this game. And upon reading that about a game that is all about exploring and discovering giant creatures, I went about hunting this game down, and within minutes I had found the game, and not long after that I was playing the game. It was almost an act of serendipity. As I was reading the Wikipedia entry on the Sea Emperor Leviathan, I had an email come through saying like, oh, Game Pass has been updated for one of their more recent new release updates. I was like, oh, maybe this game's on Game Pass. So I checked it out, and lo and behold, on Game Pass PC, there it is. And I didn't hesitate to download it. And I can honestly say, just from the first few minutes of this game alone, cemented in my mind that this game is going to be a whole different beast from anything I'd experienced previously. So for those of you who don't know, Subnautica is classed as a survival craft game where you gather resources in your environment to build tools and equipment to build up a base so you can then expand your territory and explore more of the world. Sort of like The Forest or Minecraft as another good example. The key difference between games like The Forest and Minecraft against Subnautica, as you might have guessed, is Subnautica is almost exclusively underwater. With the exception of 2 islands in the game, everything else is below the surface of the ocean. That actually lends itself to some very unique and creative environments, which for the first time in a long time made me feel and experience things that I hadn't in a video game for quite some time. So I have loads of weird interests and things I'm into, and one thing I am just deeply in love with is the idea of going to visiting different inhabitable planets, discovering things that have been lost to time, going into hidden rooms and places, all that kind of stuff has always been something I've been very into. And Subnautica is a game that kind of encompasses all of those things into one. When you first leave the life pod, if you go up through the hatch, that's when the real sense of isolation and desolation kicks in. You see the wreck of the ship you came down in, but when you look around for other landmarks, there's nothing there. It is just a vast, empty ocean and sky. And I remember when I saw this for the first time, looking over the horizon, I was thinking to myself, well, how the fuck am I meant to survive in this? Like, there's literally nothing. And then when you realise that all of your resources are going to come from going underwater, exploring the ocean, that's when it triggers something in people that, even if they don't suffer from thalassophobia, which is a word that gets tied in with this game a lot, and rightfully so, when you look into that water and you're deciding to take that first leap, it is a genuinely scary thing. You don't know what's under there. I've just come from a fucking Wikipedia article that's just told me there's like 300-foot lizards in the water that could eat me in one go. But then human nature kicks in, natural curiosity, the thing that gets a lot of people killed, overtakes you and you take the plunge. And it's a whole different world down there. which is exactly what I was looking for, which is something I didn't know I was looking for until I experienced it. Especially seeing as that this is an alien planet, there are going to be things in there that don't exist on our planet. There's peeper fish, there's the bladderfish, which is your primary source of water in the early game. You might come across your first sand shark and absolutely shit yourself because you have no way of defending against it. And as you move further and further out from the shallows, when you start looking down into things like the Grand Reef, or if you go over to where the kelp forest is, where light is extremely low, that's when a sense of overwhelming dread kicks in as you realise eventually you're going to have to go down there into the darkness just to gather the extra few bits you need to build your starter base. There might be a resource down there that you can only find in that specific biome, and you've got to go. But when you start exploring these biomes more, when you start going through the caverns and the underwater cave systems, when you start discovering other wrecks from what fell off of the Aurora, when you start finding other life pods, when you start discovering that the deeper down you go, the weirder life gets. I remember the first time I went into the Lost River, and it was completely by accident. I was just exploring this game. I was ignoring all of the important markers and where to go. I just wanted to experience this world and discover the different biomes and creatures, and coming into the Lost River for the first time, seeing all of the bones, all of the Leviathans swimming around that are hostile. The fact that there is an underwater river where there is some other substance that actually acts like there's waterfalls under there. Seeing all this for the first time, I just stopped and just looked around, and again, that very rarely happens. A lot of us take the environments in video games for granted. We just rush through them, or we're like, oh, that looks nice, oh, that looks cool, that's a nice view. But very rarely does a game stop me in my tracks, and very rarely does it stop me in my tracks more than once. The amount of times in Subnautica I stopped, like under Floating Island, like, I'm not going to tell you what's under it, but seeing that for the first time was another wow moment. When you go down to Sea Treader's Path, when you go into the inactive lava zone and the active lava zone, all of these moments just genuinely put me in a state of childlike wonder. And I was always experiencing new things. There was always a new creature I hadn't seen before. There was always a new Leviathan to scare the living piss out of me. All in a strive to find those resources, to build your base, to get better gear, to go and explore further, to get vehicles, to go deeper. But then it's not just a sense of amazement. You might be going through a very deep, dark section and a warper will appear out of nowhere and fling you from your vehicle. You might be diving down into the void just to see what's down there, and you are attacked by a ghost Leviathan. 9 times out of 10, you'll hear them before you see them as well. Some of the noises these creatures make are genuinely horrifying, especially when you're in the darkness and you hear something scream out. You panic and you look around, looking for whatever the fuck's about to eat you. Even hearing the reefback for the first time, which is initially how you discover them, you hear the sound, you look around and you see what you think is a giant whale thing floating through the water. Subnautica to me is easily now one of my favourite games I've played. I finished it, I beat the story, I am now just exploring more, trying to find secrets and Easter eggs. I'm actually playing through Below Zero right now as well, the sequel that's in early access, and I do have thoughts on it. I do think it's lacking in some ways that Subnautica seemed to nail, but then at the same time there are things in the original Subnautica that I think Below Zero is doing a much better job of, but that's another video for another time. But this series, and Subnautica 1 specifically, is a game that has genuinely surprised me and kind of made me realise how much I enjoy survival craft games, especially ones that are done really well. For some reason, Subnautica is a game I am now very passionate about. It's one of those games where its gameplay loop is very satisfying. It's one of those games where you say, oh, I'll just do this one last task, I'll just build this one last thing, and then 4 hours later you're still playing it. It's like Animal Crossing but underwater and better. I don't know how many people I'm going to piss off saying that. But Subnautica is a game I would highly, highly recommend you playing if you get a chance, if you haven't already. Honestly, you don't need to know much about the first game to get into Below Zero if you'd rather. It's technically its own story with some nods to the original, but I would say go with the first Subnautica because that game is finished, it is out full release, and it's just such an incredible experience. I know I've basically rambled about nothing for like the last 10 minutes, but I don't want to give too much away or go too deep into it because there are things in this game which would be ruined if I explained everything to you. It is a game where you need to play and explore and experience for yourself. That's why this video has just been some generic gameplay in the background, because I don't want to show you specific things, because again, I don't want to take that away from you. And if you're worried, is it going to be worth the money? Since I got this, I have put almost 150 hours into it, with only a small portion of that being dedicated just to the story itself, and the rest of it purely on base building and exploration and just improving my overall gear and equipment. I'd say this game is definitely worth the money if you have to pay for it through something like Steam if you don't have Game Pass. But yes, this game is worth every penny in my opinion. Sorry if this video's kind of come out of nowhere for seemingly no reason. I just needed to talk about this game. I don't know. I just went on a rant like I usually do, but a good rant for once. Yeah, honestly, please check the game out if you can. And quickly, right at the end, off-topic little thing, I will be returning to finish off the Doom Let's Play, but I will be streaming it so I can get a lot more out instead of just bombarding you with video after video. So look forward to that. But thank you very much for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye!